If I'm given a new job, I go into a sort of hyperactive madness for a week or two until I get the thing going. I will work nights and weekends, whatever I have to do. Ignore the family, ignore everything, just get the thing started and rolling. And I think it's something like that that has made me what I am, I think. My father was a headmaster, and he specialized in the senior boys. I think people were frightened of him. He was quite a harsh person. He had a cane in the house, and he had his own office, and we weren't supposed to talk. We had to go out and play when he was in his office, etc. He really believed in bringing up the young, talented young poor boys. He had a rule which I think was rather nice. He said, I don't care how many patches you have in your trousers, but you can't come to school with any holes. When he was dying, he died quite young, and he said to my mother, we had 4, I was the youngest of 4, he said to Mother, well, how are you going to handle things when I'm gone? And she said, well, my real worry is the little one, which was me. He's so harum-scarum, he can't settle, and all he does is play games, and I'm really worried about him. And Father said, and I don't know why, everybody thinks he was very imaginative. He said, no, the one you don't want to worry about is the little one. I believe you me, don't worry about the little one, he'll look after himself. And he turned out to be right, and everybody in the family can't understand how he knew. He never came with us on holiday. I have no recollection of my daddy being with us on holiday. But there's a picture on the sand, and there he is. I don't remember him ever coming on holiday with us. Mikey Flessman, same artist who did the Alan Tay show, did this one. It was so much like me. My wife said she started speaking to it, so I don't know. It must be quite like me, with a green moustache. I ended up going to Hereford Cathedral School. That's why I quite like starting here at the cathedral. And the school is part of the cathedral at Hereford. And I was there for 6 years. I was interested always in films. I wanted to go to Hollywood, really. Didn't know how to do it. So I wrote to J. Arthur Rank himself. Oh. Dear Mr. Rank, dear Sir Arthur Rank, wasn't he? I'm interested in this and that. And he wrote back and said, look, you should stay at school. But if you're insistent, appear at Denham Studios, sound department. They have an opening there for youngsters. And they said, well, you've passed the interview, the job is yours, but we recommend you stay at school, etc., etc. But I to hell with that. I got promoted from the normal job up into what they call the theatre, where they put the music and the sound effects, and work evenings with only the stars and a few of us. Deborah Carr, some of the ladies were, I was 17 and good looking, I suppose, and some of the ladies would put their hand on the knee, and I only wish I knew then what I know now. I could probably have quite a few of the famous ladies, but I didn't. The studios wrote to me and said that I couldn't expect the job when I came out of the army because they were going to close the studios. So I wrote to the head of the sound department and asked him what he would recommend, because I wanted to go to UCLA sound, film department, yep. But Mother said she hadn't got the money. So he said, well, there's nowhere in Britain quite right for us, but he said the Polytechnic has a course called telecommunications engineering, and they do sound and they do all sorts of things. So they applied for me from the army to go to the Polytechnic, and sure enough, I got a place. So, at the end of my 2 years, I ended up in London at the Polytechnic doing, telecommunications engineering, which was a good choice by accident, because the BBC was right next door to the Polytechnic, and when I qualified 5 years later, I got offered all the jobs I ever went for. I went for 54 jobs, and I got 54 offers. One of my sons, there's a coloured version. He sent me this. I'll read some of the stuff off. It was quite amusing. Dad, 75, no hair, head full of jokes and kids' birthdays and work storms, twinkly blue eyes for charming the girls, pen for writing in straight lines, as you can see on the paintings, also for writing very short postcards and sending £50 cheques to the kids, a tummy full of tasty food, planet Earth for holidays and fun stuff. He kind of knew me, didn't he? The other thing that surprised me in life was that I was always picked by the other guys, certainly from college onwards, to be something special. For example, if we had to run a concert at Christmas time. I was always voted to be the organizer. It really quite surprised me, because at school I was never picked to be the one. I always wanted to be, but they never picked me. They always kind of put me down a bit. But from college onwards, it was always me that was picked. But what was a determining point in my life, having done the design and installed the machine, and it kind of worked, I had agreed an acceptance test with the director of this place. It was called the Aircraft Research Establishment, ARA, in Bedford. In order to make it pass the test, it had to be really perfected. And we brought in, they sent me a guy, Laszlo Kvars, who went on to atomic science at Max Planck later, a Hungarian who just came out in 53 or something. And he found out I'd made one logical error, etc., etc. Anyway, we put it right. And he was so clever. He was unbelievable. He even made condensers out of cigarette packets, anything to prove things. You know, he was a brilliant man, very clever guy. And I said to him, Christ, Laszlo, I wish I was as clever as you. And he said, but you are. And I said, at what? At what, for God's sake? And he said, for making things happen. Yeah. He said, you're a genius at it. If you weren't around, the company would go. I said, really? He said, yes. So I kind of had the idea that maybe I should go from designing to project managing. At 50, I went freelance. And everybody said, don't do it. Everybody said, you'll never get any business. There are no freelance project managers. It doesn't exist. And I did it anyway. I just had to do it. And I was fully booked for about 20 years. So it was a good decision. But everybody warned me, whoa, hold it. You know, why would anybody hire you? So I was the first freelance project manager in the world, I think. If it's a project, it's your standards of behavior and everything. And, you know, make a family atmosphere. And, you know, good hard work, 12 hours a day, work on Sundays and Saturdays, go out and have a drink at night, meet the girls, you know, have a nice time. I really liked it. So at ITT, they wanted me to go back into engineering. Like, no, I'm sorry, you know, I'm going to be a project manager. I've always been hyperactive. And I hadn't sort of realized it. You don't think of yourself in that way when you're young. But my brother, the one who became a doctor, he always said, you've always been sort of really active. And then I began to think about it, and I was, and I have been, I am still. I'm still hyperactive. I read a book called Practical Psychology, and the third article in it said certain subjects cannot be taught in a classroom. And of course, obviously, things like golf and sports and all sorts of things can't be taught in a classroom. You have to actually do something, be out in the open. And I thought, just a second. Project management is like that. And I had written books, created training courses, but the guys who came off the training courses didn't know how to start. So I said, what the hell is happening? And I hit on the idea of doing a thing called project workstorming. The idea of the workstorm is you get a young project team, but they work for 3 days, for example, in a hotel environment, a conference environment, with 4 experts. And they do the real project work of the project team. If it's the requirements, they come out 3 days later with a requirement spec. If it's the design, they come out 3 days later with a design. And if it's planning, they come out 3 days later with a beautiful plan, etc., etc. So it's a way of learning while doing while learning, and coming out with fantastic quality. Yeah. But this was the workstorm room I built up at Vattenfall. It was called the Loft. So it was upstairs. We just turned everything else away and turned it into a workstorm room with whiteboards and things like that. And at the end of planning, if it doesn't have measurability, metrics like milestones and a budget versus spend charts and content of product and where you are in the development, etc., it's not worth the planning. Some people seem to think planning is something they do for themselves and put it in the drawer. Wrong. I don't do that. I not only do it, check it with all the other expert people who know what they're talking about, and publish it and give it to everybody and put it on the wall as well, so we know that's what we're going to do. I did the Swedish Post, which was an emergency, and we had to hire 55 guys, and some of those are still pals. That was, 20 years ago, whatever. In Sweden, in particular, since the Posten, since 1987, that was, we've remained together. I've hired them sometimes, given them work, they've given me work, etc. And right at the end, when the big Vattenfall home automation project, Sencell, was on, quite a few of them came into Vattenfall as well. And when that finished or was cancelled, I thought, now it's time. Now it's time to form a company. We sat around, what should we call it? and everybody was calling the companies by North American names, Arrowhead and Tomahawk and all this sort of thing. We went through all that sort of stuff, and then somebody came up and said, "Why do we call it Donald Davis?" I thought he was joking. I said, "No, stop pulling my leg, for God's sake."
It's been a very successful company so far. We've grown from up to 39 people at the moment. Target for 50 next year or whatever it is. So it's growing. We're paying dividends and things, but there's still a long way to go in the sort of contracts we get. But we have a contract with one of Sweden's largest industrial concerns, and apparently they're very pleased so far with what we're doing. We'll see how it goes. That might be another breakthrough if that happens.
The last 5 years or so, I've been writing books and things like that instead of attending the office every day, and I wanted to do that. I don't think they need many more books, so I've started doing my memoirs. I'm well through that. And I used to paint quite a lot. I started in Copenhagen, funnily enough, on the SAS project in the winters. Summers were very busy, Tivoli and everything, but the winters were pretty quiet, so I started painting. And I do panorama photography on my boat trips and things. I'm quite looking forward to going back to some of those hobbies, as it were, and continue to write my memoirs. And I want to attend all the high spots of the company, fly back for the meetings, Christmas. My birthday, of course, will be quite a big thing next year. And as long as I can keep going, I hope I can come back as a visitor, to show my face. I had been working in a place, and he said, "We're going to give you a 2-week contract, and that's it, finish. Don't ever expect another day from us." I said, "Fine, that's okay." And I walked into the office, and the guy said, "Donald Davis, who did SAS 10 years ago." I said, "Yes." He said, "I want you to stay and work for me."
Okay, that's
so
good.
I changed my contract after 2 weeks, and I've been here 30 years, so that's really how it is.